Are you nourishing your body or just feeding it? This week on The Natural Upgrade, we head to California to chat with Malibu Zen to dive into the transformative potential of true nutrition combined with intense thermal therapy. The results of this 72-year-old reveals why quality sleep and a cleaned out system are essential for thriving in our high stress world. Discover how to start feeding your cells for renewed strength, focus, and vitality every day. And by the way, our podcast is sponsored by Nature's Pure Blend because we believe natural solutions are the ultimate upgrade. So I'm going to be introducing today an old friend of mine. I call him a biohacker. He has basically gone from extremes in life that grew up in the California Malibu area and has created a company and a business with extreme levels of success, and then got to a dead end in his life and found that there was something else missing. And he is now what I call a Zen master. He refers to himself as Malibu Zen. He's got an incredible story. We're going to be interviewing him today. And so what I'm going to do first is just give you a little bit of the overlay before I introduce you to Ken, focusing on unlocking your body's hidden powers. And to do that, obviously, the first thing you have to have right is nutrition. So we'll be talking about diet in the third part of today's podcast. The other things that you have to have, though, is you have to focus on a constant level of renewal. And that comes from harnessing the extremes that you can find in a concept called thermal therapy and breathwork. I've actually practiced with him at his place on Malibu Beach that will be here in just a second. The second thing you have to have for peak performance is you have to optimize sleep and energy, because I've actually been to the studio there where Ken lives. I've actually experienced the deep level of rest and relaxation. And I'll tell you, there's no place on earth that to me has given me such levels of, I would call it equanimity, if I'm going to use a $25 word. I'm going to draw in Ken now. Welcome to the podcast. I see you're sitting right there in front of the ocean, one of my favorite places to sit. And you have an amazing life, my friend, and I'm really honored to have had a chance to know you for almost 20 years now. I just decided to jump on here today and catch you in one of your relaxed moments. I know you've already been up to the pool this morning there in Palisades, come back to the ocean, and this is the place where you find that equanimity that is something that's allowed you to find, I would say, an enlightened level of life. Ken, jump in here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on your show. First of all, it's an honor to be able to be with someone that I have such respect for, as a guy that knows how to push the limit as much as I do, just in a different way. Okay.
Sure.
I look at you as the Marine, that mitochondria, like forceful action, and makes things happen by pushing through any barrier. And I'm more of the guy that is soft, approaching things from a state of observe, and only go forward when I know that a little bit of effort can move a lot. And I try not to use as much energy as you do or other people do to get things that enable me to be content and have that spirit of equanimity. I grew up on a farm outside a little small town called Lodi, California. Okay. And this little town was, at that time, maybe 25,000 people. I thought of it as a little town because my little subgroup of that town was a nurturing, very spiritually happy, sharing life in a heaven on earth compared to the rest of the world that I learned about by being immersed in it. It was outside the town on a vineyard farm, and we grew everything organically. My parents were vegetarians, and my grandparents grew everything on their own, and their backyard garden was like amazing Garden of Eden. And that was normal for me.
So I'm going to use the word expert here and define that, because expert sometimes comes from people that have a theoretical certification. They have a degree in a certain type of concept. And then there's the other kind of expert that is experiential expert. So really what I'd like to focus on here in the next few minutes is covering these three kind of general areas that you have become an experiential expert at. like I said, you have individuals that come there from all over the world, and obviously right up from Los Angeles, that's just a few minutes away from you. But they come there for a specific reason because they are not looking for more theory. They're looking for someone that is a guide, someone that can be a coach, an instructor. You fit that bill in so many different areas. And I know when I've come there and spent some time actually going through thermal therapy, that's something that's a big topic today by so many individuals that talk about it. And yet there's very few of these individuals that have practiced as long as you have practiced. And then you've created your own style that has now allowed you to become a biohacker. That's the new term that everyone's using. But I see so many people that claim the term biohacking, but they don't have the experiential time under their belt. So let's talk about some of this if we can, because I see the ocean splashing up behind you there at the rail, one of my favorite places to hang out there with you. So tell me about when you have clients that come to visit you. They come in there with their wings knocked off, they're exhausted. One of the very first things I know you start with them, something that we do here at Nature's Pure Blend, is you make sure that they have nutrition, because they're usually lacking. They're so deficient. So that's like the third area that we were going to talk about, but maybe it should be the first. Tell me how important nutrition is for someone that's struggling with stress and this life in general, and maybe falling back because the stress is just beating them up. How important is diet to begin with?
When we think about nutrition, I think about nutrition as supplements that to add to a diet that will be absorbed by the cells to nutrify and to give one true core and integral strength. And the mitochondria are the most important part of our being. Without the cell having energy, you can't do anything. And for me to ever advise people to do any supplement regime, I first of all want to help them become cleaned out so that whatever comes in is absorbed. And I do a really extreme level of cleansing before, and I have done this like every year for as long as I can think. I'll try to go, oh wow, did you feel that? That was
I just saw it. I just saw it.
That was a major one. I have this, I actually feel it right through every cell. So what I do is I spend a lot of time on fasting with just juices and doing colonics, where you go down and you just clean everything out from below, and a colonic therapist will massage the top of your colon, the ascending colon, your transverse colon, and your descending colon, to the point where everything is cleaned out after a few days. And when you put water in, clear water comes out, and there's nothing left anymore that's blocking the absorption as it goes through the gastrointestinal tract to get to the cilia and to be able to be absorbed in the intestine to nutrify the blood. What a difference that makes.
So a detox, that's a pretty extreme detox. Some people haven't heard of a colonic before. I'm sure they can Google it, but that's something that I've heard that a lot of the medical profession outside of the United States, particularly Russia, is when you come in and you have a quote ailment, an illness, one of the first things they do is they reset your colon with a colonic.
There's a Gerson Institute in Mexico that has been famous for doing this, as well as water fasting. So when I think about nutrition, it comes after being rested and being cleaned out. Be in a place with your mind that you're able to willingly take it in and experience it fully. And in order for the cell to bring in that which is good and nutrify the powerhouse within, we have to have this total spirit of equanimity again, where that is in a state of homeostasis, where any little addition that comes in on a subtle level, you can feel it. And I'd like to go from there on the biohacking, which is a popular word. I really don't even, I haven't even dove into it because I've been experiencing my own quest to learn from total immersion practice. And when it comes to this new cold plunge,
Now, let's talk about that because that's a thing that everybody's Googling, everybody's interested in. I know you're 72, but you do not look like you're 72, nor do you function like you're 72. I would say can outperform most 20-year-olds. And I think a lot of it is not just your diet and your fasting, which means that you're giving your body a chance to rest from constantly overfeeding it and then doing a detox. But you do a detox at a different level. I've experienced with you. So let's talk about the thermal therapy. Tell me about your sauna, and then tell me about how you go into the sauna and go to the cold therapy and why.
First of all, let me tell you how I found the sauna and what the relief of the sauna and the cold plunge was. In my life, there was a time when I was in my 20s and I would go from my house, drive from my house outside of town, into the town, into Century City, where they had this great ice plunge and a sauna next to it. And I'm doing everything I can during the sauna sessions to be the guy that outlasts everybody else in that sauna at that time in the room. And in order to do that, I had to replenish my liquid with beet juice, which is your beautiful flow of your product line.
Sure.
And water, and just drink a lot of that. And I could just feel it coming through my pores to the point where I'm ready now for the cold after the con. And I would get into this cold plunge. I don't know how cold it was, but it was a kind of tank that I have to hold on to the railing and go straight down like a pool railing and go deep. And finally my head goes, okay, I'm at head level, I'm breathing. And then take a big breath and just go under and hold onto the stair step. Sure. And I would feel so comfortable in that realm that the feeling of me versus water starts disappearing zone by zone on my body. Right. And I could feel my legs it became spiritual. Steve, it was a spiritual realm. Yep. It was beyond the physical because I was no longer fighting it. I was it. There was no separation. There was no me versus it. Sure. I accepted it. The ego is gone. There was no room for me to, I'm Ken in a cold plunge. No. What I am is just pure water, cold water. Sure. And I would visualize and see this in my mind when I looked down at my legs. They had disappeared. All I saw was clear water. I looked down and I felt this invisibility force happening everywhere. And I got to be so comfortable and so, accepting of the death of ego. My heartbeat goes way, way down.
Slows down, sure.
And I tried to get up and I'm thinking like, why do I even want to bother getting up? And some guys were there and they pulled me out and they thought I was dead. My heartbeat was down in the 20s. It was like extreme.
Okay.
But I'll never forget the joy that I had by not being painfully aware of any parts of the body. It was invisible. There's no separation between my ego, me, and it was just it.
That's like a touchstone experience in your life at 23, 24 years old in the middle of so much stress. And you, I want to say, got privileged on purpose, accident, who cares? But you experienced this separation. I know this is very a Buddhist concept of the oneness that all ancient religions talk about. But you, because of the extreme between putting your body through the sauna where it heated up and sweated all of the toxins through the pores, and you stayed there at such a level that you refed your body, like you said, with some natural beet juice, and then you went in and put yourself in a cold plunge. Let's say it's sub 45. I've been in yours at your place, and it's 34 degrees.
Right. And I got down to 32 now.
Oh my gosh. But I remember when I got in the first time, I noticed we'd finished the first round in the sauna, and I don't know how long each round is on the actual
hourglass. 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. And what's the temperature of the sauna? I don't recall.
This is extreme. 240 degrees.
Okay.
It's so hot. It's crazy.
But probably when I was in there with you, you didn't have it at 240.
No, probably 220, probably 210.
Okay. But I remember breathing, and we'll talk about breath work, but I remember using my training in breath work, some that you acknowledged, because your body starts stressing because of the extreme heat. And I was using the full body, full diaphragmatic breathing just to watch all the grains finally come out of the hourglass, right? Then to step out of there and you're overheated. And I remember stepping into your ice plunge and realizing that when I stepped into the ice plunge, I was stepping onto a floor of ice that would form at the bottom of the actual tank. And then sitting down, you have that 60-second clock that moves there. And I had watched you already do 10 minutes in the cold plunge. And I remember when I got in there and I'm using my breathing again to slow down my panic, my body going from extreme to another extreme. And I'm watching the first 60 seconds coming around. And I had to get out the first time. I only made it 1 minute. It wasn't, I think, until the second or third cycle that I made it to 4. And I was watching you every time go through this at 10 plus minutes per session. And what I felt, this going back to this feeling of equanimity, every stress, all of the have tos and must dos and fears that life brings us, there was no place for them to hang on to. You're talking about hanging on to the side of the railing. There was such a level of peace that I experienced after going through these cycles of the hot and then back into the cold and then stepping out onto your patio. And you get to do this every day.
Well, I try not to do more than 6 minutes alone. And because you were there, I could go 10 minutes because that's a little far. Like what happened to me back in the day in the 70s in the Century West Club, where it became a spiritual thing. That's something that most ice plungers don't ever experience. They never experience the separation where it becomes a spiritual realm. They're still in the physical realm, and I am most of the time, unless I'm with the right company and we did some preparatory work.
Sure.
Or I can really be so relaxed that I can go into that extreme. And let me be very clear about something with respect to addressing and looking at that ice plunge. There's not one time that I can ever say I look forward to going in there. No. So you may have experienced, you may have witnessed me do something I hate doing. Okay. I absolutely despise doing it. The last thing I want to do is to do it. But because I did it, I put myself in a position afterwards that I have money in the bank. That the energy is now protected.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
And in the Qigong exercises that I do, I practice and I teach,
energy management.
It's all about containment of vital life force. And what we do is we take in the heat inside our body, inside our mind, and then by going into the cold, we seal it off. We protect it. So we take this shield and we get inside, we energize it, and then we jump outside and we just contain it, seal it in. So we tap out the bad chi and then we seal in the good chi. That's what we. So that's my mental exercise when I go into that extreme.
So that's one. So that's one of the 3 areas that we're touching on today is the thermal therapy. And I know we're going to come back and dig into these more in depth and probably have a session on each one of them because there's a whole science that I know that you know about from just the hot sauna. There's a separate level of science. And I know from all the research that is now documenting this academically, that there is a boost in testosterone. There is a boost in your entire immune system. You can't get from anything else. And then the other value that so many people now have been able to document, you mentioned the mitochondria early on, but it actually takes the cold plunge and actually extends your telomeres. So if you want something that, and most people don't know what telomeres are, but those are the things that can determine how long you will have life. And when you're talking about an actual practice that you can do and it supplement everything else that you're doing from a nutritional standpoint, let's say, you're overcharging or supercharging, is a better term, your body to be able to increase its immune system and at the same time increase its digestion and increase its level of rest. So let's jump into the second part now because I want to make sure we stay in our time window. You have a very what I would call regimented, almost sacred process that you do about your rest. And I've experienced, because I've been able to come and visit your place. But tell me about your mindset and why sleep and deep rest is maybe the most valuable thing that people look over with trying to reboost their immune system and their vitality in life. Tell me about that.
When I think about my physical routine to get there, I can't help but also think about the after effects of what that gave me in terms of charging up the battery within so that I can endure extremes like jumping into that ice bath.
Sure.
Without that deep rest and that spirit of I'm okay, I can't put myself in any position of challenge to the same degree that I could with deep rest as a foundation. To me, the most important thing that all of us can start with is deep sleep. For me, once again, I carry it to somewhat of an extreme by conventional standards, but it's from learning from personal experience of watching people that I really respect sleep deep. And I've been around a lot of spiritual masters.
Sure.
And as I said, as an extrovert, I really attempt to take the best of whoever I'm with inside of me so that I can become a more expanded human being as can.
Sure.
Watching my sleep habits from afar would encourage anybody to modify a little bit, I think, if they want to have deep rest. I've made it a point to sleep in the darkest space imaginable.
Absolutely.
I have curtains within curtains that are blacked out.
Yep.
And when I'm in this, I also have fresh, recirculating, filtered air at 62 degrees going into this chamber. So when I'm here, those two conditions are met. I also make it a point to get in bed at the same time every single night, if possible, or as close to that as possible, knowing that I'm going to get my full 8 hours as close to that as possible. And if I don't get it, I'll try to get a half an hour nap or whatever it is that I need during the day so that I get that recycling of rest and exuberance every single day in a balanced way. I look at it like the yin and yang sign. There's a rest time with a dot in the middle of go for it, and activity-wise with a dot that says rest. And that yin-yang sign is basically what we try to pattern ourselves with.
Sure.
The other thing that I do is when I'm lying in bed, I put myself in the same kind of ergonomic position that I do when I'm in the sauna. And I have certain pillows so that energy will flow right. By the practice of Qigong that I practice, it's called standing like a tree, Jamjong. And it's all about how the body is positioned so that energy flows without blockage.
Okay.
When I go to bed and I'm lying flat and I just do a little bit of breath at work, inhale, box over, I can do that and fall asleep within a couple of minutes. But being in that right position and knowing that everything is good for the day and not carrying anything forward that I couldn't have taken care of during the day, not having a lot of regrets. And how you look at your subconscious the moment before you go to bed will really help dictate the quality of deep rest that you're going to experience. Because I don't want to have bad nightmares about how I could have done something better to make my world and the world of those around me better. And I don't want to leave a lot on the table. If I do, I'm not going to get as deep. And there may be a time that I wake up during the night. I drink a little bit of apple cider vinegar with water, and I'll sleep all night, and I'll pee 8 hours later like a racehorse or an elephant. And here I'm at an age where a lot of guys have been complaining about prostate problems, etc. Now, I don't have that because I think a lot has to do with the deep sleep that I get and being rested enough to do that. It's the foundation of everything. So we're at a lucky spot where we can choose from such an abundance and such an array of possibilities. It's extremely important to have a guide help curate that which works for you. And that which works for you may not work for me, or vice versa. So when I talk about anything that benefits me, there's some things that are universal and you might be able to apply. But the other thing about my deep sleep, because that's where we started on this little section, is I do everything I can when I am in bed not to let another brain of stress reverberate through my ears of nothing. I don't want to have any interruptions during that time. It's precious. And if I can get a good night's sleep, I wake up, I can handle practically anything with,
Sure.
again, equanimity. I love that word.
Yeah. So we've got a couple different things here as far as we've talked about. We've covered a lot of space. And of course, a lot of people listening or watching this particular podcast are going, okay, I want to know about this particular thing, Ken. I want to know about sauna, and I want to know how that's going to affect me. I want to know what cold plunge is going to do. I want to know about diet. I want to know about the thing that you touched on before diet was cleansing. Okay. Because you got to look at our diet, the things that we stick in our mouth. And you grew up in a unique environment. Like you mentioned, your family was vegetarian before probably vegetarian was cool. But you were exposed to what I would call a unorthodox environment, because when you're talking about this timeline of you growing up, we're talking what, late 50s, early 60s, roughly?
Yeah.
Okay. So then was the time right in the actual 70s is when they started loading sugar, and now everything that we eat is GMO. So the nutritional quality of what we're able to put in our mouth these days, today, is severely reduced. I want to say degraded from where we were at decades ago. And so, that's one of the reasons why we have to think about our diet. We have to think about what we are putting, where the source came from. And a lot of people don't even have that idea. They're sitting there eating stuff that is laden with flour. And if you look at sugar as a toxin, and most people do not know that because it tastes so good and we're all addicted to it. And now it's in every single food product that you go to the store. You have to read the label. Every time I'm going there, I'm reading the label to see how can I get something that is the absolute minimum amount of sugar, because you can't find anything with zero unless you make it yourself. Right. You have such an incredible experience. And so what I'm really wanting to tell the person that's viewing, the person that's listening to the podcast, is we're not just going to give you a general overview of Malibu Zen and how he has come to these amazing awareness levels, but all of that kind of stress is not giving us good quality of sleep, because when we're judging other people, we're also judging ourselves. And when we're not eating things, we're not getting ourselves the nutrition.
We have this expression that mind controls breath. Breath controls chi, controls movement. And it's that order of things. When I see somebody wound up from taking in all those ingredients that you talk about in the store, and I've walked through the nicest stores in the world with you nearby. There's one that is so curated. It's vegetable and fruit and bottles of homemade stuff.
It's beautiful.
It's like you walk in here and you go, how is this possible?
I know.
The Garden of Eden is here on earth. Yeah. To curate the very best, to make that possible. It makes whole food look like, I don't know, like an outhouse at the end of McDonald's.
I don't know if it's that extreme, but it was certainly another level up. As much as Whole Foods is beautiful, this was a different level for sure. Yes.
So what I really like to do when I walk into a new store is I like to go to the outside aisles. Okay. Here they have, the outside is when they have the produce. And when you look in certain stores' produce section, it's literally like walking into abundance. It just makes you feel so good. You can't help but smile by God's radiance in the form of fresh, clean,
organic,
and you take it home, you rinse it, and you eat it, or you put it into a smoothie, and you go, thank you, God.
So we got to finish this up because we're at our limit. But this is
not only are we at the limit, my battery on this phone is going.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. The whole thing that we started off here is focusing on unlocking your body's hidden powers, and what you have been able to graciously give us is a lot of ideas on how to first detox and then proper diet. You talked about sleep hygiene, let me say that correctly. And the fact that you had filtered air and it's 62 degrees and it's absolutely dark and there's no distraction, no noise. And you get that deep level of reset and baseline for then to put your body into what's a good stressful situation, which is the thermal therapy between the hot and the extreme cold. And all of that together, you're constantly using your breath work And in order to do the breath work, you're being mindful, meaning that you're centered in the moment, not thinking about the past, not worried about the future, because you can't, because you're in a hot sauna and you've got to make it through the end of the cycle, or you're in a cold plunge and you're trying to breathe to keep your panic system. Exactly. So you have been really gracious with giving us an extreme overview of everything. And I know we're going to be coming back here to do additional sessions down the road to do deeper dives.
If there's anything that you and I talk about, Steve, that can help somebody just expand a little bit and experiment it on its real basis and how it's supposed to be absorbed, like nutrition, if you have the right mindset taking in nutrition and the right body cleaned out, you'll grow from it. You can't help it grow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And without that, I have to say that it's been a beautiful opportunity here to share with you a little bit, Steve. And I feel your presence always. And that little necklace that you have around your mic is one that, when I think about that, I know exactly where you were. And I know a little bit of us is within you and your realm. And when you look at it, it's like that moment of what's called Satori. It just wakes you right up and go, bong, this is it. No longer do I have to go on this. I get to bong. Like, that can be a trigger to your brain, just like the ice bath is to me. Yes. And when you're in that layer, between the layers of ice on the bottom, forming, and the layer of ice that popped up at the top, and you slide in like a human sandwich between two icebergs, and and I'm watching you get comfortable. And then you come out and you can barely walk, you're so frozen. And then you thaw out. It's like a big part of me is celebrating with you, through you at that moment. It's the greatest joy I can ever have, is experiencing other people's growth. That's my favorite thing in the world.
To see their growth and then to see them touch, we'll use that word one more time, but it's a piece of exceptional, it's a moment of exceptional peace that is that tranquility called equanimity. Did I say that right?
So
we'll do this again. I want to make sure that before your battery dies on us here, and I've seen the waves that are just coming back in again. They're a monster, but man, what an amazing place. What an amazing place that life has rewarded you to live in. I appreciate not only your friendship, but your experience, your insights, and we'll get back together again and go over some of these in more detail, and we can break it down, and we'll probably get some questions that are coming from some of our viewers asking specific questions. We'll be sure and put that in there as well.
I'd be glad to answer anything. I'm a guy that has very little hold backness in terms of who I am, and I feel pretty free about that. All right. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye.
Yeah. Hey, it's Steve Moreland from The Natural Upgrade. I just wanted to extend a personal thank you for hanging out with us here on our podcast. So I wanted to offer you the opportunity to check out the rest of our podcast and just to learn a little more about who we are and what we do. So below this podcast that you're watching right now, there's going to be a link. Check us out. If you can't find the link, then come to naturespureblend.com and you'll see the podcast link there on the top menu. You can jump over there, look at all our podcasts. We'd love to have you come back again. You can schedule this so that you'll be updated every time we release a new podcast. Then you can watch it on whatever platform that you're comfortable with. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and I hope that this made a difference in your life. We're here to do one thing, and that is to help you unleash your best self and do it naturally. Take care.